Kester maintains Kevin Franke had no idea his children were in trouble.
And some critics are saying, how could you not know? How could you spend this much time without speaking to your kids? What does he have to say about that?
He was following the advice of who he thought was a professional mental health expert, telling him to stay away. The only way to save his family was to stay apart from his family at that point, while he thought they were working toward reconciliation. He had no idea that there was this kind of abuse going on. She was telling him that everything was blissful and everything was wonderful. That, in conjunction with the fact she didn't tell him that she had taken the kids to southern Utah to be in Jodi's home. He would have resisted that, but she didn't tell him. He was being advised by his mental health care professional to stay away from the family and not contact the kids.
Kester does say before his wife's arrest, Kevin Franke received counseling from Hildebrandt.
During the separation, Kevin was attending men's groups that were facilitated by Jodi, and during those groups, he was being downgraded and diminished and told how bad he was and that he needed to repent, and that the best way to repent was to not infect his family with his problems, and so that's why you need to stay away. He wasn't the only one in those men's groups that was undergoing exactly what he was undergoing at her suggestion and recommendation.
Just so I get a better idea of what these men groups are, would that be, what would that entail? They're going to like a group and kind of talking about things? Who are the people who are kind of like laying down the law, so to speak?
Jodi. And they were Zoom meetings. I don't think they ever met together personally, even though maybe a sponsor of someone would meet personally, but sporadically.
Kester says because of this counseling, Kevin Franke believed his relationship was on the road to recovery.
They were working toward reconciliation. There was no separate maintenance documents. There was no divorce filed because he was being led to believe they were working toward reconciliation. He wanted to be back with his family. He wanted to be back with his wife, but was being told by Jodi and by Ruby that in order to repair all this, you need to stay away. And was being told that, hey, with you away, everything's blissful, the kids are doing well, everything's just great.
On Monday, both Ruby Franke and Hildebrandt were set to appear in Washington County Court for a status hearing discussing bail. Law&Crime Network was at the courthouse when attorneys filed a motion to delay the hearing. Kester tells us the hearing was pushed because attorneys received new and crucial information from law enforcement, but couldn't give us the specifics. He also says his client isn't quite ready to speak publicly.
And when you and I had texted previously, I asked whether Kevin wants to speak, and your reply was interesting to me in that you said Kevin does want to speak, just not now.
Correct.
So, if not now, when?
When the dust has kind of settled. He just doesn't want to jeopardize. He doesn't want to say something, because we've committed to the court. We're not going to disparage any of the family. And Kevin's gone above and beyond that. He's not only not disparaged anyone, he's reaching out to try to bring this family closer together and to kind of heal wounds. And so in terms of him speaking out, I think he wants to accomplish the objective that he wants to get his family back together. But I think at some point he'll want to tell the whole story. I just don't think this is a time to declare war. And he and I have counseled, and we believe that this is a time for healing. A lot of bad things have happened to this family, and he values his family and he values his children above all. And he's committed to doing whatever it takes, even if it's him remaining silent. He's committed to doing that in order to make the future better for his children.
Meanwhile, Kevin Franke is fighting for custody of his children through a series of juvenile hearings in north central Utah. Kester tells us those hearings may not remain public for long.
It's pretty much just scheduling. The court is taking under advisement a motion to seal the proceedings and to restrict certain people from the courtroom, and probably a pretty broad swath of people, just to protect the privacy and confidentiality of the things that we're discussing involving the children, because they have a right to have their privacy needs met, and I think it's a good thing.
As Law&Crime Network reported, shocking allegations came out of a previous juvenile hearing when Ruby Franke appeared virtually. She claimed one of her children started having problems at age 3 when they began looking at pornography. While Franke didn't mention the child by name, she alleged her child sexually assaulted one of their younger siblings, which led to that child sexually assaulting other kids. Kester says his client would prefer if future hearings are closed off.
He thinks that it serves his kids' best interest to give them as little of publicity as possible. I think it was very damaging the last time when the reporter snuck into the courtroom and then divulged very, very confidential and information that Mrs. Franke stated about one of their children. And I just think that was damaging to everyone. It was especially damaging to the child. So I think that's the kind of thing the court's trying to prevent. He wishes it wouldn't have been published, but because it's involving his son in a very confidential matter, I shouldn't comment about that. I shouldn't comment about my client's belief about that.
Meanwhile, Kester doubles down, saying he believes the entire Franke family was brainwashed at the hand of Jodi Hildebrandt.
It's a very delicate situation. These kids have been horribly, horribly brainwashed, indoctrinated, and it's scary.
Brainwashed by who?
Jodi.
Do you believe that Ruby was brainwashed by Jodi?
Yes. And I say that because everyone, the focus has been on Kevin. Where was he? Why was he absent? How does that all happen? So he was doing that at Ruby's direction, who I think was being directed by Jodi. This is the way that you've got to repair your marriage and repair your family. So they were all sort of kind of being manipulated, and this is just my opinion, by Jodi. And I think she knew what she was doing, and it was causing significant damage. And so when Kevin's critics are out there saying, where was he? He was acting at the direction of what he thought was a competent mental health care provider and advisor. And to me, the better question is, what kind of mental health care provider would advise a family and a husband and wife and a husband and or a father and children that this can repair your family if you just stay away from each other? And I'm confident that she told that to Ruby. I'm confident that the children are being told that, and Kevin was certainly being told that I know what I'm doing, you need to stay away.
Do you believe that Kevin was brainwashed as well?
I do. He's a bright guy, but he was desperate to save his family and save his marriage. He loved his kids, he loved his wife, and he was desperate to have that come back together. But it was Jodi's intervention that prevented that, and it was manipulating him, saying, if you just do this, if you just overcome your greed and your selfishness and your narcissism, you will get your family back together, but you got to stay away and you got to repent. And so he was following, again, what he thought was expert advice, and that's why he was so distraught and felt deceived and disappointed and frightened when this all came out.
Kester says it was Hildebrandt's involvement that unraveled the Franke family.
There's a lot I want to tell you, but probably shouldn't at this point, because it's kind of delicate between the state and him trying to get his kids back. So, but there's a lot to be told. There's a lot of chapters in this book, and the more I dig into it, the more I've said this before and I'll say it again, I think that Jodi is in the middle of all this, and I describe her as an onion with an octopus inside. The more layers you peel back about Jodi's life and connections, every time you peel back a layer, an octopus tentacle comes springing out. There is a lot to be told. This is a fascinating and tragic event in their lives, and will probably have lifelong effects. It's gonna take him a long time to help these kids get through the trauma that's been perpetrated on them, but he's up to it.